Hey y'all, it's Astreus, and a couple months ago I was given the opportunity to go see a launch at the Kennedy Space Center of the Starlink satellites. I actually didn't know who was Starlink satellites until we got to Kennedy Space Center. My aunt and uncle had actually bought us the tickets to go see the launch and go to Kennedy Space Center. And while the launch was really cool, I was a little disappointed that it was a Starlink launch, and I want to tell you why. So this is something that I can get on and on about because I get so riled up about it. So if you don't know what Starlink is, it's a satellite internet constellation being constructed by SpaceX. It's going to provide satellite internet access to supposedly the whole globe. The constellation is going to consist of thousands of mass-produced satellites in low Earth orbit, or LEO, which will communicate with designated ground receivers, which are actually pretty cool. They're phased array antenna. That's not really the point of this. Current satellite internet actually works with a very large satellite that is 22,000-ish miles above a certain point on Earth in geosynchronous orbit, whereas LEO is at altitude of less than about 1,000 kilometers, but could be low as 160 kilometers above Earth. So it's much closer to Earth than the current satellite internet satellites that we're using. So theoretically, this means it would be faster speeds because there's less latency in the time that it would have to get to Earth. So if you want to get Starlink, it actually is in beta right now, and you can pay $500 for the setup kit, and then it's about $100 after that every month to get Starlink internet. And so far the reviews have been really good. People have seemed to like it a lot. So right now there are about 1,700 Starlink satellites in space in low Earth orbit, or LEO. SpaceX has gotten approval to put 12,000 into orbit by 2027, and they are looking to get 30,000 more approved for a total of 42,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. To put that in like a little bit of perspective, over all of human history, there's only been about 11,600 satellites sent into space. And of those 11,600 satellites, only about 4,300 are active right now. So that's so many more satellites they want above Earth. So what is the problem with having so many satellites? Is there like an issue with it? Yeah, there's lots of issues with it. So basically, one of the first things that I want to talk about is astronomers. So when you're looking up at the night sky, a lot of times, if you are in the right area, you're going to be able to see the ISS blinking through the sky. There's like an app for it. You can look it up. It's like a really cool thing. It's very exciting to see the ISS and be able to point it out, and it goes pretty fast. That's super exciting. But when you're looking up in the night sky and you see all these like dotted lights that aren't planes, but like string of pearl lights going throughout the sky that are blocking the view of different things you're trying to see as an amateur astronomer, that's not so great. So astronomers have expressed particular concerns about Starlink satellites being in the sky. Specifically, there's one big concern about this future observatory that will be up in 2022, known as the Vera Rubin Observatory. And it's going to study the entire universe in exquisite detail. And the problem is they're worried that all the Starlink satellites that are going to be up are going to be hindering their study. On top of that, radio astronomers are already prepared to have a lot of interference from the radio-based antennas that are on the Starlink satellites. The International Astronomical Union expressed concerns in a statement, and this is what they said. Basically, satellite constellations can pose a significant or debilitating threat to important existing and future astronomical infrastructures, and we urge their designers and deployers as well as policymakers to work with the astronomical community in a concerted effort to analyze and understand the impact of these satellite constellations. So that's one big problem with all these different Starlink satellites. They're a lot brighter than anyone expected them to be. So not only is this going to be hindering learning more about space and seeing further out into space, this can also hinder our ability to find asteroids that are going to be coming towards Earth in a timely manner. So it may take longer for us to seek out and find the asteroids that might be headed towards Earth than it would before we had all these satellites up in the sky. To the credit of SpaceX, they are saying that they're trying to work with astronomers in solving these problems because, like I said, they didn't see it coming, which it's a lot closer to Earth. They're very shiny. Of course, they're going to be reflective. Yeah, they're definitely going to be brighter than the ones that are further out. That's just kind of obvious to me, but they are trying to work with them. They said they're going to do this in 2 different ways. One thing that they're going to try to do with the satellites that are already up there, and also satellites will be putting up in the future, is they're going to change the way the satellites fly to their operational altitude. So they would fly with the satellite's solar array knife edge to the sun instead of flat. So normally they would fly like this, like the pictures you kind of see, and that's how they're reflecting back at Earth. But they're going to try and do it like this, so there's going to be less reflection off of that solar array. They're also, with the newer satellites, they're going to be trying to paint them black to minimize the reflective properties, which who knows how that's going to turn out. But they are trying to help. So that's just one problem with all the Starlink satellites in the constellation, is that there is going to be a lot of impact on the dark night sky. The second big problem with it is space junk. So one of the biggest problems that we have in orbit around Earth right now is space junk. Old satellites that broke off and aren't working anymore, pieces of things that have come off the ISS, things that have come off rockets, the pieces that would break off in entry and re-entry and that kind of thing. They're also flying around, and they go really, really fast, like a bullet, basically. So tiny things like flecks of paint can impact the ISS and cause dings in the glass and that kind of thing. Even like recently, there was a hole put into one of the arms of the space station, and thankfully it's still operational, but there's a hole in it now from just a piece of space debris. So space junk's already a problem. Now, when we're talking about Starlink, while they're still operational, they can already be a problem to spacecraft trying to exit or re-enter the Earth. So in 2019, the European Space Agency announced it had directed a satellite to undertake evasive maneuvers to avoid crashing into Starlink 44, one of the first 60 satellites in the constellation. So not even 1,000 had been up yet, only 60, and it already had to make evasive maneuvers to get around it. And then just a few days ago, a decommissioned Starlink satellite and a Falcon 9 rocket debris threatened a US space station's cargo ship. So far, out of the 1,740 Starlink satellites that are up there, 2.5% of those spacecraft have failed. Some of those failures may be intentional, but like testing and that kind of thing, but it's actually not known because SpaceX hasn't released any information. So astronomers have resorted to using like satellite movement data from both SpaceX and the US government to see which satellites have fallen back towards Earth or which of them have just stopped moving and maneuvering around. If, say, 3% of the maximum planned Starlink constellation fail, that would mean 1,200 satellites would be just up there chilling, dead. 550-pound satellites, size of a desk, just circling the planet at a speed of basically a bullet. If the space junk problem gets extreme, a chain of collisions could spiral out of control and surround Earth in a practically impassable field of debris, which is a possibility that is called the Kessler Syndrome. This is named after Donald Kessler, who worked for NASA's Johnson Space Center in 1978, and wrote a paper that basically said that it would take hundreds or even thousands of years for the debris to clear up to make spaceflight safe again. So one of the things that SpaceX is working towards helping this problem, trying to mitigate the space debris, is it says that satellites will naturally deorbit or burn up in the Earth's atmosphere when they die. It can take up to 5 years for these satellites to deorbit and burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. So in those 5 years, they're just chilling. Like I said, 550-pound things just flying around the Earth. So in the end, it really is all about the money. So Elon Musk is saying that basically they think it could bring in about $50 billion a year to use Starlink. So he is hoping that this money will be able to fund his mission to Mars. But what I think is, like, if he wants to get to Mars, he has to get off Earth first. And if your Starlinks are creating a massive Wall-E situation around our Earth, we're not even going to be able to get off of Earth to get to Mars in the first place. One point someone made on this article that I was reading is that the point of the Starlink constellation is to provide this global internet access to places on the globe that are not currently served by any other communication technologies. But The information that's currently available, it shows that the cost of the access will be way too high in nearly every location that needs internet access. So basically, Starlink will only be able to provide like an alternate to residents of wealthy countries like America who already have ways to access the internet. So this really frustrates me because one other thing I was seeing was that, oh, well, Starlink's so much cheaper than putting cables into the ground in different places. That's one of the main reasons we're moving towards satellite, because normal internet is cables in the ground and that's too expensive. But I think the price of being able to go to space and blocking that is a lot higher than any amount of money that you could come up with. We can't replace that. We can't replace being able to see the stars with our own eyes. We can't replace that with more money. Like, that's not gonna help us in the future. And so I'm really worried about this, and I'm really hoping that legislation will be able to pick up and make some more rules about who is allowed to put what satellites where, and put a cap on how many satellites can be in different orbits, because I want our future generations to be able to see the night sky without blinking lights getting in the way, and be able to actually access the moon without having to get through tons of space debris. So don't get me wrong, I would love to see better internet access for all and more money funded towards space, but maybe this isn't the right way to go about it. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm more than happy to hear anybody who has a different opinion. I would love to hear why you have that different opinion. And if you like this video, then subscribe, like it, and that's what I'm into this week.